What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a throwback review because Florence and the Machine have a brand new album titled High as Hope, so why not cover the albums that I haven't reviewed up to this point? That would of course be this album, the 2009 debut Lungs, but also 2011 Ceremonials. I also posted a review back in 2015 when it came out of How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful, so if you would like to, then head to the end of this video or watch till the end and then go click that link. Florence and the Machine are one of the biggest success stories to come from the UK over the past decade, and there are plenty, sure, but this is an alternative act. I say alternative, although there's probably a small umbrella of other terms that would help describe their music properly, but I think that they're one of the biggest things to especially come out of the alternative scene and to cross over to the mainstream not only in their home country, but also the United States. Dog Days Are Over was a top 30 hit in the US and actually got plenty of radio time, and I would see the music video back in the day in VH1 and several other channels back when they actually played music on TV, and I think that I started to fall for them after hearing not just that song, but also Kiss with a Fist. That was a more punk-leaning jam, and it described a very troubling relationship where a couple just constantly argued, and it also really started to show us exactly what Florence Welch, the lead singer of this band, would have as a writing style. She often uses metaphors and melodramatic lyrics to really escalate exactly what she has to say, whether it be about a relationship starting, ending, falling in love, or life, and just an expression of either joy, sadness, or anger. She's always able to escalate it, but it's not just her, it's also the machine aspect that's tagged onto the name. Sure, she is the face that everyone knows, but I do think that the backing band and even the producers and the co-writers like Paul Epworth and James Ford, who also worked a lot and extensively with the Arctic Monkeys, deserve a lot of the credit. Dog Days Are Over is a victorious, jubilant song that truly can put a smile on your face even in the darkest of times, and I think that it succeeded in doing that over the past decade or so. It's one of their most well-known. The music video is pretty intense and a little bit out there as well. Not my favorite thing ever, but I respect the fact that so many people do. I just love the song as it is, and it's still, I think, among their best tracks in their collection. They also had the single Kiss with a Fist, which was a little bit more rock-oriented, and I can understand that for some it's jarring, especially when listening to this album. I think that overall, Lungs has much more of a dramatic pacing to it, lots of pianos, harps, even the bass guitar and the pounding drum rhythms that just add a sense of theatrics to it. There's that tension, and then something like, I don't know, the track Kiss with a Fist can maybe break that pacing for some. I accept the criticism, but I don't think that it personally applies to me, and I know a lot of other fans too. For the first few years that I was aware of this band, I didn't check out more of the material for whatever reason. Wasn't a good idea, but around the release of Ceremonials, I truly started to get into them. I never reviewed that album on the channel for unknown reasons, but I was starting to become a fan, and at this point, I would say that they're one of my favorite bands, especially one of my favorite UK bands of this century. The two songs that I've highlighted so far, Dog Days Are Over and Kiss with a Fist, are prime examples of when the album is a little bit more upbeat and maybe a bit more lighthearted perhaps, but much of this album uses darker imagery and, like I said, kind of like a fantasy escape world and a way to escalate things and take it to the next level. Look at Cosmic Love and the way that it ties in space and themes of just soaring and atmospheres and everything like that. And while that's not my favorite song on this LP by any means, it's still extremely strong and holds up as one of their singles all these years later. Now, I have to say that some of my personal favorites come in the deep cuts, and deep cuts galore. I would say that even some of the tracks that were released as singles in the UK are still underrated, and point in case, probably my favorite song on the entire LP, Rabbit Heart, Raise It Up. This track talks about fame and starting to be on the cusp of it as they were with the release of Lungs. It was just before they exploded, and the chorus here is so striking and so catchy. It's fervent with its spirit, and it just gives you a sense of euphoria as you listen. And the way that she makes the Midas comparisons and everything turning to gold, it's a really nice way to use like a metaphor to tie in the fact that fame is changing and can change people. And maybe it's a fear of changing, and maybe maybe it's just a fear of the unknown, but the way that this track plays out is truly fascinating. I've also really come to love some of the cuts such as Howl. That one uses such vivid and dark imagery, talking about these two lovers that essentially turn animalistic because of what love is doing to them. It's this chemical that drives them to madness, essentially, not knowing exactly where the relationship stands perhaps, and it's these images that she uses and gives to the listener's mind that really help take you into that world, and that's what Lungs does such a good job of in general. It's able to make you feel what it's saying, and the musical sensations that really arise when listening to this as well truly helps you get into the album. On Howl, it does have those pounding drums that are very typical of this album, but also some detailed bass work and even the fluctuating vocals from Welch. That's something that truly started to show me how talented she is, and I think that she's only gotten better over time. Their cover of the UK punk band The Ludes' The Girl with One Eye is really fascinating to me as well, because it takes such a dark subject that seems to at the very least be about some form of mistreatment or even abuse or somebody being oppressed, and they're able to give it a little bit of a twist, like, I know that there's going to be redemption at the end of the day, I just don't know how it's going to be done yet, and it's written from a very interesting perspective. There's a lot of different theories as to what the song's actually about, but me personally, I'm gonna stay with the zipped lips on this one because I really don't want to dive into that. What's important here is that this is a very interesting cover. It was never actually recorded by the Ludes, they just played it live, but apparently Florence Welch would actually get up on stage with them and perform it, but they decided to record it for the debut album, and the results are actually pretty fascinating, especially as the song plays out in its second act and she truly starts to unleash vocally. I also really love a couple of the tracks towards the tail end of Lungs, and the first of those is My Boy Builds Coffins. That's a very intriguing title for a song. If you look at that, you're probably thinking, this is the darkest thing in the world, but it actually opens up on a somewhat lighthearted note with the musicality of it greeting you with an acoustic guitar and a little bit more of a brighter tempo, but still, the lyrics are very interesting here. It shows that her boyfriend at the time was kind of focused on death, but also maybe obsessed over some other things. In fact, she was dating the lead singer of the Ludes, and that was the song that they covered, that band. She hung out with them a lot, dated one of the members, and in fact, on this one, she's talking about the fact that he was working on this coffin to be photographed for their album cover. So actually listening to this song all these years later, it's cool how it just kind of takes on a life of its own, because you have an imagination, and if you're able to use it properly, you can really read into a track like this and just make it come to life in a different way. Drumming Song is obviously a classic in their discography as well, a staple. I would love to see this live because I've seen clips of it and it always sounds so good. I obviously love the pounding drum rhythm on this, but also you can't really go without noting the other superstars here. Florence Welch herself and her voice on this one, and the way that she draws you in with this tale of romance and what exactly is going on as it plays out. And it is melodramatic, but in the best way. You love a storyteller on YouTube, right? You watch them, well, some people do. Well, this is storytelling and music done right. It gets you into it because you know that the premise of the story is something that you can relate to, but they take it to a more theatric and cinematic type way. As I said before, there are some tracks that I feel are hurt by maybe repetition or sounding similar to the other songs here, and I think that a couple of those would be I'm Not Calling You a Liar, which is still a good song. It just feels a little bit more restrained in some ways and a little bit more lukewarm, and also the track towards the end called Blinding. This one I think is hurt by repetition, and the vocals just feel like they're being held back a bit. It's okay to have slower songs. I'm not coming down on Florence and the Machine for that at all, and I do think that Florence Welch can sound great in a slower setting, but this, it just feels like a little bit more cruise control compared to the rest of the stuff surrounding it. I will say that the closing track, which is a cover of a 1980s hit, You've Got the Love, is really well done. It's something that builds up and has an expressive chorus, and they add their own touch to that 80s classic. And also another one of my top favorite songs here that I somehow haven't even mentioned up to this point, which is so good, is called Hurricane Drunk, and this is absolutely an underrated gem from them. I think that it's something where you look at the basic premise of it and you start to see, okay, there's a breakup involved and maybe you are relating to this because you've been there and you see this person, and in this case, Florence is seeing this guy out with another girl. It's a guy that she used to date, and then she starts to realize, you know what, he's out having fun. I'm gonna go out and get drunk as hell too. Why not? But it's done in a much more tactful way, and the way that I'm describing it makes it sound like not that great. Trust me, it's good. While it might not be perfect, this album damn sure gets a lot of things right, and I think that the atmosphere, the lyrical content, and obviously Florence Welch as a vocalist and just the backing band really nailed what they were going for. For the most part, they brought a connectivity that just wasn't rivaled by a lot of debuts around that time. 2009 was kind of a turning point around 09 and 2010, of course, in music, and I think that they were really among the most talented of that era, and they continue pushing forward and making strides to this day. I'm excited to see what they do on High as Hope, even with a lot of the backing band being a lot different at this point as of 2018. Anyways, for me personally on this album Lungs, this is getting a strong 4 out of 5 and a very high recommendation. I think that this album has had a very high replay factor over the years. I maybe don't come back to it all the time, but then again, I'm a music critic and I stay extremely busy, and I don't get to come back to projects that I love as much as I would like to. How has it held up for you guys over the past decade or so? Let me know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video while you're here, and if you're able to, support me on Patreon to help throwback reviews like this keep coming every single month. The direct link to my Patreon is right over here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on other Florence and the Machine reviews, and also plenty of other music related content right here on the channel. If you want to see another Florence themed video, tab right here, or another recent video I did right over here. All of my socials are in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.